Welcome, everyone that is able to join us today. We're so happy to see you there. My name is Cabret Facey, and I work in the marketing department at Mobilize. Today, we're going to talk about how you can enhance your volunteer experience. We're going to talk about recruitment strategy. We're going to talk about re-engagement and how to use smart data to really take your program off. We're happy to be joined by Color of Change and GetThrough today, but that's enough of. Well, first, as we go through the webinar, please feel free to drop questions in the Q&A. The Q&A is much easier for me to monitor than the chat, but if there are some questions that slip through the chat, I will try to collect them and just copy and paste them too, so we get to those as well. We will be taking those questions towards the end, so even though you write them during the webinar, we won't really have time to visit them till the end. Now I've spoken too much and I could give it over to Liz Mullen.
Cool. Hi, everyone. I'll introduce myself more formally in a second, but I'll start off with our agenda for today. First, we're going to do introductions with GetThrough, Mobilize, and Color of Change. Then we'll talk about some recruitment strategies and best practices. Get into some re-engagement tactics, and then we'll do some Q&A. We're covering a pretty broad topic, but I think with GetThrough, Mobilize, and Color of Change, we have a lot of kind of insights from different areas to share, and we hope that this will help you think about how you can implement some of these tactics in your own programs. Hello, again, I'm Liz. I'm a product manager at Mobilize. I've been with the company since 2018, and before that, my background was all in campaigns. So I was an organizer. I worked in organizing management and digital organizing, and I was excited to get involved in a company like Mobilize that was making a lot of organizers' lives a lot more easy. So that's how I kind of got involved here. And I'm excited to be here. So who is Mobilize? What do we do? For those of you who don't already use us or aren't familiar, we connect mission-driven organizations and supporters to make the world more just, inclusive, and democratic. That's our mission. And we're laser focused on helping you drive more action more easily to achieve your mission. In some of the later slides, I'll show you what some of the surfaces on Mobilize and what it looks like, and a little bit more detail about what we do. But those are kind of our goals. Now I'll pass it to Kat.
Hi, I'm Kat with GetThrough. I am our marketing manager. And prior to joining GetThrough, I spent about 10 to 15 years working in organizing and politics, specifically electoral politics in the Southeast region. I do a little bit of everything at GetThrough that is, digital strategy, conferences, anything underneath the marketing umbrella I touch. But I was telling this story before we got on the call. I started on our sales team in politics and advocacy. And so I'm super excited to be here with Color of Change, a client for whom I set up many, many, many text accounts so that they could do some of the great work that you will hear more about in just a little bit. But that's me. Who is GetThrough? So we are the company that powers Through Text and Through Talk. You might be more familiar with the names of the products versus the name of the company, but that's us. We are a company that has next generation peer-to-peer calling and texting tools that were created by organizers for organizers. So a lot of the folks who work here at GetThrough actually come from the campaign world or have other types of field experience. And really GetThrough started because we knew that we could build better one-to-one outreach tools for progressives to organize at scale. And we believe in the power of having real conversations real fast. Since 2016, when we started, we have sent, including last year, which was pretty busy for most of us, we have sent more than 1 billion messages for democratic and progressive political campaigns, as well as state parties, unions, nonprofits, and advocacy organizations like our good friends at Color of Change.
Hi, so My name is Jamie. I am a senior data manager with Color of Change, and I've been with the team since 2019. My background is really, truly organizing. So when I first started my professional career, I was a canvas director for a fundraising and then electoral door knocking office. So my background is really all about making sure that organizers have the tools that they need to be able to do the work that is so impactful. I was hired by Color of Change really because of that background. I can go back. Really because of that background, because of the fact that I have so much experience with working on the ground. I really am all about finding ways to make sure that the organizers who I support have really simple and effective ways of reaching out to their own members. And over the course of this presentation today, you'll hear a lot about the ways that as a senior data manager, I'm working to leverage Mobilize and GetThrough in ways that make life easier for organizers. And now we can talk more about Color of Change as a whole. So Color of Change is a racial justice organization that really advocates specifically for Black lives. We are digital first, and we've been around since 2005, working to design campaigns that are both digital and on the ground, and powerful enough to end practices that unfairly hold Black people back, and champion solutions. We are not just an email organization, we are also all about on the ground organizing. And next. So that's really evidenced by some of our most recent wins as well. So these campaigns are all about making sure that in an intersectional way, Black folks are being advocated for well and represented well in our society. So we have some campaigns that are all about changing the ways that websites advertise weddings. Some of them are about ending cash bail. We really try to address both the kind of democratic implications on Black folks, as well as sort of pop culture influences and how that affects the way that people are represented in society. I will pass off.
Great. So to start, we're going to do a quick kind of overview of how some of these digital tool spaces have grown in the last few years, and then we'll hear from Jamie about how Color of Change sort of uses all of these tools together to create a really great streamlined program. But on the Mobilize side, we got started in 2017, 2018. And in the 4 years since 2016, we've grown to support over 2,000 organizations and 4.2 million volunteers and 15 million actions. So I think this is really evidence of how signing up for things online has become the premier way that people want to take action. And we also saw that when the pandemic hit, things really shifted to virtual organizing quickly, and our partners were really able to adapt super fast. On this graph down here, you can see the percentage of virtual events that were on the platform in February of 2020. It's this lighter blue color. And then you see all of a sudden during the pandemic, that number of in-person events went basically to zero, and people just figured out how to do this online really, really fast. So this is just evidence of how people have been able to adapt to a virtual first world, and how, you know, it takes sort of the online recruitment experience one step further.
Okay, so we saw a few trends emerge last year for a multitude of reasons, but ultimately the through line was that peer-to-peer texting growth was pretty exponential. And we can attribute that to a rapidly changing landscape, both in societal implications as well as technology. But there were a few things that we noticed that were really interesting for us. So the first is that we saw use cases expand and evolve. So we know obviously that a lot of organizations needed to pivot their electoral efforts to a 100% distributed model and tailor a lot of their scripts and approach to things like COVID safety safe voting guidelines and mail-in ballot information. It was really no longer just about, here is election day and here is where you go. A lot of campaigns were having to navigate entirely new systems and a lot of new information in order to mobilize people to get to the polls. And with that, we saw that down ballot races also got a ton of love, which frankly, we love to see it. And what we also saw was the ability for smaller races. So we're talking about races at the municipal level or maybe state level legislative races in districts that really hadn't gotten a lot of momentum or press in previous cycles. They were able to recruit volunteers from more diverse geographic regions than they normally would have been able to had they not used peer-to-peer texting. And then for a lot of smaller races, but then also outside of the electoral sphere, a lot of smaller nonprofit organizations as well. 2020 was their first year adding peer-to-peer texting or calling to their toolbox. And whether this was because it previously hadn't been part of their budget or because they really hadn't considered it a viable strategy due to the size of their universe or the size of their organization, COVID really forced folks to get creative and try some new things. And we're so happy that peer-to-peer texting and calling was one of them because they saw great results. But we also know that last year was much bigger than elections, right? So as we navigated the collective trauma and continue to navigate the collective trauma of this pandemic together, one small way that GetThrough was really honored to be able to contribute was by our COVID-19, grant program, which is something that we actually still offer. So happy to provide more information about that as well. For organizations that were and still are providing wellness checks or direct relief efforts to those in need of food, shelter, or access to other resources and critical health information, we offered a grant of 10,000 messages or dials and a lowered per message dial rate after that initial grant had been exhausted. So campaigns and organizations were able to provide thousands of food deliveries, information on rent and utility assistance, and really deeply sought connection with those most impacted by the prolonged isolation of the pandemic.
All right. So during COVID, we really had to completely rethink the ways that we captured data. Spreadsheets just didn't work anymore. You can't have a check-in at the door. So what is the way that you make sure that you're not losing information about people who participate with us and are able to actually re-engage them? So for us, our thought process around this was creating a strategic retention workflow that integrates both the Mobilized platform, every action, and through text to make sure that we are not only capturing information about the people who engage with us, but also that we are finding really effective ways to re-engage them at the right time. So for our organization, Mobilize became the kind of front door for volunteer action. It's where we create our events, it's where we bring in new people, and it's where we make sure that those new people who find us are captured in our systems with a first name, last name, and a zip code. Pretty essential for being able to repeatedly reach out to them. After people sign up for events on Mobilize, through the integration with every action, our volunteers automatically sync to our CRM, where we can then take in their data, clean it, sort it in effective ways to make sure that we are really understanding the full member profile of who engages with us. After an action happens, Mobilize has built-in event feedback surveys, which then give us additional insight into post-event conversations that we should have with our volunteers. And then GetThrough is used primarily with its through text functionality to be able to allow us to reach out to people in a very scalable way. Virtual phone banks are really time consuming and can end up being a bit of a there's a cost benefit analysis to every phone bank you do. With GetThrough and through text specifically, we're able to really scale up our engagement and re-engagement with people. And because we have that every action integration, we're able to create really effective lists to make sure that we are talking to the right people and giving them a very specific and effective message.
Awesome. So we'll move into some more recruitment strategies and talk about a little bit about how Color of Change uses Mobilize to run that recruitment. But first, I'm going to give you a little bit of an overview of what Mobilize is, what we do. But a big thing that you can do on Mobilize, kind of the bread and butter of what we do, is you can create events really fast in our dashboard. You can create a whole host of events you see here, in-person events, various online versions of actions, and virtual events as well. And then they all display on this branded events feed. This is Color of Change's events feed. So it makes sort of setting up events really easy. We also do a lot of other things. We make it easy to recruit supporters more easily. And we also really increase supporter engagement and add a lot of conversion optimized automated nudges to ask people to sign up for more events and to really kind of take the confirmation process off of your plate. And then that's all kind of turbocharged by the effects of our network. Like I said before, over 2,000 organizations use Mobilize, and we offer features that make it really easy to collaborate amongst each other, promote each other's events, and sort of tap into that network effect of Mobilize. So developing a volunteer recruitment strategy. It's really important to do this at times when things are not incredibly busy or you don't have a huge event coming up. It's great to sort of set up these systems that you can repeat over and over again, and not just sort of like leave it until you have a big event. But it's good to set some recruitment guidelines and sort of a process and system for how you'll do it. Determine how you'll recruit volunteers and train other staff and volunteers on how to do that. Identify potential folks to recruit, and then really continue to refine your strategy and invest in retention at every step of the way. Jamie's going to talk a little bit about some of the ways that Color of Change does this, but really just taking stock of where things are at and how you can improve is a great way to sort of ensure that you're continuing to maximize your efficiency in recruiting volunteers. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some data that we see on Mobilize that I think can be really useful to not only people who are Mobilize users and who have the Mobilize platform, but also really anyone who is looking to recruit volunteers. I'll talk about how this works on Mobilize and then a few kind of like suggestions for how you could even do this without it. But some stuff that we've learned along the way over the last 3 or 4 years is one, offer a wide variety of volunteer opportunities. There's really something for everybody. And I know, like, as an organizer, I've had people who have come in and they've really been a volunteer who like comes in and brings food or like sets up for events or writes postcards or something like that. And then as I get to know them, they're more comfortable with the opportunities and they might decide that they want to take on something like canvassing or going to a rally or something like that. But it's important to really create opportunities for everybody. One of the sort of data points that sticks out to me is that 25% of people who view an event on Mobilize end up signing up for at least one shift. So when you have a lot of events up, whether it's on Mobilize or online, or if you're recruiting through email, however you're doing it, when you have opportunities, people will show up to them. So, create a lot of opportunities for people. Join forces with partners in order to do that whenever you can. So on Mobilize, you're able to promote the events of different partners. So for example, you'll see this little hosted by icon right here. That means that this event is showing up on, say, if this was Color of Change's page, they could promote the events for all of these organizations and their volunteers could sign up for them. So if you are ever feeling like you don't have enough events on your feed, you can promote partners and then you'll still have opportunities for people. So that's a really great way to just sort of make sure that you always have stuff available to people. But we find that over 13% of all Mobilized shifts came from this sort of cross promotion feature. The second kind of like chunk of lessons that we've learned is one, to really empower volunteers to organize. We see that 13.5% of shifts on the Mobilized platform come from our Bring a Friend asks. So we ask volunteers after they sign up for something, we show them a little pop-up that says, share this with a friend, bring a friend to this. And 13.5% of the shifts on Mobilize come from that. So it really just sort of shows that when asked, people will do the work for you and recruit someone themselves. And then 14% of all of the events on Mobilize in 2020 were hosted by volunteers. We make it really easy for volunteers to host their own events on your behalf. We give organizations a lot of control over what volunteers can create in those events, but we give hosts a lot of sort of leeway to really make those events their own. And we found that 14% of all of the events on Mobilize last year were these volunteer hosted style events. So it's a great way to sort of fulfill what I was just talking about, making sure that there's always opportunities for people. And when your volunteers feel like they have a stake in this and they're given responsibility, then they'll probably keep coming back. So that's another thing that we've learned. And then finally, make it really easy to get involved and stay involved. Mobilize makes this really easy. We send out confirmation texts and emails at every step of the process. We remind people about the event. And we also send people Followup where they can sign up for more shifts. So we see that 15% of attendees sign up for another shift when they're prompted via Mobilize. And on average, the people who do that sign up for 1.9 additional events. So if you have Mobilize, this is really easy, but even if you don't, you can just make sure that you have email templates ready to go and that you have something to send off really fast after an event to thank a volunteer, and that you're constantly kind of re-engaging people by asking them to show up for more stuff, because we really see from the data that it works. And now Jamie's going to talk a little bit about Color of Change community building events.
Yeah, so the Color of Change model pre-COVID to now has been always about, in terms of field engagement, building really close relationships and community with our members. We have big national campaigns, but we really want for our engaged volunteers on the ground to be able to work on issues that are really local to their community, whether it be DA races that are really prescient or really just very hyper local issues. And one of the really great things about Mobilize's structure is that we are able to create region-based events to help connect volunteers to the communities that they are associated with. And so what that looks like is we are able to create events in the Mobilize platform, label them very clearly with like the regional breakdown. So for example, what you see on the screen is one of our kind of Northeast region squad groups. It's DC, Maryland, and Virginia. And while it is a virtual event technically, it's also still geo-targeted, as you can see where it says host in Baltimore, Maryland. And this helps make it easy for people who are near that area to find the events that are really targeted for them. Part of the reason why we stress this so hard is because even in a world where everything is digital, being able to feel that you are building local community ties helps people keep coming back. It feels more like we are doing what we're trying to do, which is give them ways to develop their own organizing skills and work on issues that are relevant to them and important to them. It also helps them build relationships with each other. So in terms of the way these events actually look, it's a Zoom call, right? But it's a Zoom call with lots of little breakouts. We have lots of questions and icebreakers where people get to know each other on a deeper level. They find out, oh, actually, I live really close to you. And it just gives people an opportunity to still feel connected in a world where it's so hard to feel connected. We also do a pretty significant amount of leveraging the volunteer hosted events feature in Mobilize. During last winter, we held a lot of PPE events where a person who is a volunteer on one of our squads could request distribution of like gloves, face masks for their community, and then they would create an event, host it, have their friends and family sign up, and they would be able to distribute PPE to people who are a part of their actual local community. On the back end, from a data side, being able to have volunteer hosted events also helps us do a better job of keeping up with where people are moving along the leadership ladder. Someone who's holding a volunteer event is someone who's taking on leadership within our organization, and it's someone who we would want to communicate via a peer-to-peer text campaign, for example, to get them to take on more. They're already taking on more things. Let's get you more involved. Let's get you more invested and loop you into new things that we are working on. My biggest recommendation for ways to really get the most out of your Mobilize usage is really taking advantage of the event feedback feature. So after every event, Mobilize sends out a post-shift text and email that is a request for feedback, but also doubles as an attendance survey. In a virtual space, taking attendance is sometimes better, but also often sometimes way harder than it is when you're in a room with people. So by utilizing Mobilize's feedback and attendance survey, we're able to cut down some of the work for organizers by having a set of attendees automatically be marked as attended or no shows for events. But also you can leverage either direct exports from the Mobilize dashboard, or if you are a more data-driven team and have access to a SQL mirror, you can utilize that as well. And it'll give you the opportunity to actually take the one-sentence reply where people give qualitative feedback about the events and make those insights really easily available to your organizers. You also get this event feedback for volunteer-hosted events, which I find particularly useful, so that you can get a sense of, even if you weren't able to attend the event hosted by volunteer, you can see what people thought about it. Did people love it? Did people have problems with it? Do you need to follow up with them about the way that they're doing things? You can also find out trends in your team and staff hosted events. Are people finding that they are getting locked out of the Zoom meeting too often and so they don't like it? Is that why people aren't showing? Or do people really love the way your organizers communicate the context for the issues you're working on? All of this is really accessible using the event feedback, and if you're not using it, I highly recommend it.
Great, that was really helpful, Jamie. And now we'll talk about re-engagement tactics with Through Text and Color of Change.
Yeah, okay, so you have your Mobilize account set up and you know your objectives and you know your target list of folks and you're ready to start texting. How do you get that information from one to another? So the great news is Through Text has an every action integration. And for those who might use other iterations, it's important to remember that Van has a lot of iterations, right? So every action is one, Vote Builder is another, State Voices, America Votes, Labor Activation Network, just to make sure that we're all speaking from a common lexicon. We're really just talking about Van, right? So it's a super easy and quick integration to set up. You will just need an API key, you'll get that, and then you'll send it to our support team who are incredible, and then we'll work with you to set up that integration. Once it is set up, you can cut your list in every action and then send it directly to Through Text using just a click of that SMS button. And then you can go in and name your group in Through Text and start your campaign. And then from there, you talk to folks, right? But before you do that, you can set up, as you're creating your survey in the back end of through text, right? You can sync things like Canvas results, event RSVPs, survey questions, and activist codes from every action into your through text campaign as part of that campaign creation process. So then the beauty of setting that sync up is the final point here. Once you start having those conversations, you will then start to collect that critical data that you need. And my favorite part about the two-way sync, which is just this last point on this slide here, Liz, is that the data syncs back into your committee in every action in real time. So if you are recruiting for an event, or if you are doing, voter ID, the responses that you're getting from folks in terms of like RSVP or Canvas results are going right back into your every action committee in real time. So with through text, there's no constant downloading of data, uploading it again, importing and exporting. It's just that two-way sync is just absolutely everything.
All right, hi. So what I want to talk about for a little while here is color of change and our engagement flows. So how are we leveraging all these tools essentially? We treat every action as our source of truth for volunteers who sign up through Mobilize and any other entry points. The reason for this is we just really like the way that every action's data is structured and the way that it can function as a hub, because through text can sync to every action, Mobilize can sync to every action, and it's an easy interface for our organizers to leverage. As events are created in Mobilize, we are able to start to generate a timeline and profile for our volunteers. We're able to see things like what events have they signed up for, what events have they attended, where do they live. We're also able to generate effective and recent contact information for these people. With the sync, it's essentially instantaneous between entry on Mobilize to being visible on the interface in every action. So I can allow and encourage our organizers to to utilize the functionality for any kind of deeper understanding of their volunteers and their interests. So on a kind of like more straightforward timeline of the way that this experience works for our volunteers, we leverage Mobilize's automated text. So when Mobilize events are created, there are a set of automated texts and emails that are sent out that remind people about events, that function is confirms, and that is so useful for us. It helps kind of cover the gaps and increase our show rate. But we like to support that even more with a set of through text peer-to-peer engagement. So we will have an event, we will set it up in Mobilize, Mobilize will send it a couple of confirms, and then we will also create our own peer-to-peer campaign in through text for people who have signed up for the event. It gives us a chance to have deeper conversations with people, answer questions that they have, be more visible in their minds, and also encourage them to recognize that there's a person on the other end who really wants to see them and wants to see them at this event. Because of through text capacity to integrate with every action, that means that after those texts are sent out, we are able to actually track how many texts were received, who did we talk to, and we can also add in we can also track some extra pieces of information I'll talk about later to further build relationships and fine tune our understanding of our volunteers. Next. So as we are utilizing Mobilize for event tracking and attendance capture, as well as contact information gathering, and we're using through text to continue to build that relationship and increase our show rates, we are also able to go into every action and build lists that are hyper targeted, that allow us to strategize around when we want to re-engage volunteers and on what actions we want to re-engage them. When events are created in Mobilize, they are also categorized with an event type. So we know information like when the event was hosted, and every action, van, and NGP are all the same platform. So all the same thing. So when we are leveraging every action, we're able to build really effective lists to think about who we want to talk to, when we want to talk to them, and what we want to talk to them about. There will be instances where we will pull a list of people who've attended multiple phone banking events, and we'll say, this person's already pretty engaged. Let's do a specific text campaign that's all about talking to them about getting into some other even higher level of engagement activity, and just curate our messaging really specifically to this person and their needs. Next. You're also able to leverage survey questions in text campaigns to get better insight into the desires of your members on at scale. So, for example, you can create a survey question that's asking people what issues they want to be involved in, what types of activities and events they want to do. You can create a through text campaign targeting those people, track their responses, and then use that to further guide the way that you navigate your own issue priorities.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Jamie and Kat, for going through that really kind of comprehensive flow. It looked like we had some questions in the chat. That's it for the prepared slides that we have for this. And I'm excited to dive into questions.
Yeah, so
and actually, I saw some stuff in the chat about every action van and GP that might be really helpful to like smooth out before we even dig into questions. But every action van and NGP are all part of the same company, Every Action, which is a suite of tools. So the CRM side, Van or Vote Builder, if you have access to that, then you can do a lot of the stuff that Jamie was talking about on the previous slides. We should have made that more clear in the presentation. Sorry for the confusion about that, but hopefully that clears it up a little bit. Okay, questions.
all right. So here goes one. I think any three of you could really dive into this, but any strategies you could recommend for moving folks from lighter engagement, such as text banking, to more intense engagement, such as phone banking, door knocking. Either how to identify volunteers who have found their groove and might be comfortable trying a new stretch activity, or recruiting folks to phone banking directly. So yeah, strategies to move those supporters along that ladder of engagement.
Yeah, I can start by speaking to it from my perspective, and then give space for other people to elaborate on their own. So for us, it's all about finding people who have done a certain number of previous actions. So typically I'm looking at people who have already attended, 4 text events in the past, 2 months. Like, those are people who are already invested in our work, who are showing up, who are motivated to do things at a level they're comfortable with. And then I want to encourage organizers to start holding one-on-ones with those people, have meetings with them, talk to them about their interests, and talk to them about the, the value of phone banking and other kind of higher stretch asks. They're already invested, and I think it's all about leaning into that, understanding, like, they want to be a part of your campaigns, they want to help your work, so give them opportunities to do so.
Yeah, I would say that that's on the nose. And also some things that I've personally found that were helpful is when you find that folks are particularly adept at text banking. And what I mean by that is that they're having really engaging conversations. If you are in an organization or on a campaign that does something like persuasion texting, for example, some of your strongest persuasion texters are going to be great on the phones as well, right? Because they're able to have those more detailed, empathetic conversations, or they're excited about it. But another tactic that I've found personally helpful is trying to get a sense of not just what volunteers can do, but are interested in doing, or at least interested in trying right off the jump. So whether that's, collecting that information when they sign up to volunteer, or just having a quick onboarding conversation, because that way you're able to get a larger landscape of what your volunteers can or are interested in doing, and then balance that with what the needs are in that moment. So if you have a lot of, everybody wants to text bank, right? Because it's really easy to do, and you don't necessarily have to be on the phone or on the doors to do it. But again, it's about saying, we've got a great text banking team, and we could also use some of the same energy over on the phones or knocking doors or doing lit drops. And you've indicated previously that this is something you'd be interested, would you be open to having a conversation about helping us with that? And then I think Jamie's earlier point about folks who have already sort of informally or formally taken on leadership positions in an organization by hosting multiple events, or sort of being more of a seasoned voice for newer volunteers or people that you would naturally want to approach about having those heavier or stretch asks.
All right. And Liz, did you want to add anything?
Oh, I just love this, that someone asked this question, and I love both of those answers. And I was just going to say, like, it really is consistent with the data that we see in Mobilized, where when people have opportunities to volunteer, they'll do them. When we ask people to do more after their shift via automated recruitment, a lot of people take those opportunities. And when we ask people, or when organizations ask people to host, a lot of people do that. So I think, like Jamie and Kat summed this up really well, but creating those opportunities for people and being really structured within your organization, no matter how large or small it is just a great way to make sure that when someone does come in the door, that you keep them there and you keep them interested and challenged.
Thank you. So let me just say that this webinar is being recorded, and we will share that link after. So if you asked about that, don't worry, we got you covered. You'll get a recording of the entire thing. So there are a few questions about cost, or how do I learn more? So I just want to give Kat and Liz especially just some space to again tell people where they could find pricing for the products, and how they could speak to someone to learn more.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and take that first. I saw a few, you're right, I saw a few different, I cannot talk today. A few different questions in chat about this. So I'm going to go ahead and put in the chat itself a link to how you can get started with us. So there's a couple of different points of entry, right? If you want to demo with our sales team and see the tools in action, we would love to do that for you. You can book for talk or text or both. And we'll walk you through, how it works, briefly walk you through the integration, talk about what the admin side of it looks like, right? So it's really helpful to get an understanding of how things are integrated and created from a campaign perspective. And then also talk about pricing, which to that end, our pricing is really simple and really transparent. So the way that it works on the text side specifically is that it's 8 cents for every outgoing message that you send. So there are no charges for incoming messages or replies, right? Those are free. We do cell phone number validation. So when you push your list into through text, we scrub your list. So we remove any numbers that can't be texted. That number validation is free. Strategic support from our client success team, as well as ongoing technical support from our support team, free. So it's just 8 cents for every outgoing message. And to sort of head off at the pass, what I think the next question might be is if there's concerns about how those costs can add up, not only do we offer bulk discounts for volume, but we also can provide some script review and some strategic advice to help you sort of create your scripts so that you're getting the information that you need in as quick of a manner as possible without sacrificing those authentic one-to-one connections. And then on the talk side, it's just 5.5 cents per dial. So that's it. There's a $100 setup fee when you sign up. If you sign up for both tools, we waive one of those. And that's really it. And we try and work with folks on, invoicing monthly versus prepay. We understand that people might have different budgetary needs and might need to be invoiced differently. So we're happy to work with you there. But I did put that link in the chat on how to request a demo or watch our videos on your own time. And then I'll also go ahead and throw our sales team's email in the chat as well. If you do have any follow-up questions, you can tell them that I sent you.
Great. And for Mobilize, you can go to this link right here, the join.mobilize.us link. You can create a starter account, which is a free account that gets you up to about, I believe it's 50 shifts, a few users and a few events. And then our pricing, one of our sales team members can work with you on that. And when you go to join.mobilize.us, there's a place for you to reach out about pricing and to put together a contract.
Thank you. So this question seems more aligned with maybe Liz and Jamie, but Kat, you go ahead and chime in if you think it fits too. This question asks, have you seen any really creative online events? A year into online organizing, we're constantly trying to come up with ways to make our events fun for those who may hide it in the weeds during our events and those who may not identify as super volunteers. So this is a question about like retention, what type of creative events could they start to implement to get, those newer folks coming back and those folks who aren't super volunteers but are somewhat involved coming back?
I also really love this question because the answer is yes. We've seen so many really creative events on the platform, especially leading up to Election Day last year. We saw some really cool stuff. I think like the organizations that I saw do this really well and keep their volunteers engaged through Election Day were really responsive to just like the feedback that they received and were responsive to what volunteers needed. And I saw a lot of like, I think it was the Texas Dems did like a dance and dial recurring event and stuff like that was fun and got people to volunteer, but also got people to feel like they were part of a community in this weird remote environment. So that was one example of something that I saw. We also saw some like fun trivia stuff here and there, and just these more kind of like social events sprinkled throughout, just like very clear-cut voter contact. And yeah, we saw tons of creative stuff. And I think that like sprinkling in those things that are fun and interesting is a good way to make sure that your volunteers are getting to know each other and feel like they're volunteering with people as opposed to just sitting at their house volunteering by themselves. And Jamie, I bet you have some answers for this as well.
Yeah, I just want to second the really, really powerful value in like trivia. I think trivia is really fun. I also think that like sprinkling your fun events, especially when you're in a hard push, like election season, really, really effective. The more you like sprinkle in some fun events, the more people are like, you can bring in new people, and then they can interact with people who are already doing the political work, and like you can have people who are your volunteers recruiting other people in, honestly. The other thing that I think can be helpful that we started doing is we occasionally will do like themed events. So in a virtual space, getting people on camera can be really, really helpful for making it feel more lively. And so having like a costume event or an event where people are like wearing their team jersey or something can be really helpful for getting people excited to be seen. And so this is more useful for people who have done like one or two events already, but it can be really great for like re-engaging people who maybe getting tired, maybe getting a little bit of burnout. Can help a lot.
Thank you. So this question is a bit more technical in nature. So I'm just gonna throw it out there, and if we can't answer it, we'll address it later. But This person has a through text integration. They're wondering if you could have a through text integration with both Every Action and My Voters in Van.
I was going to say, I feel like this is for me. So the question is, can you have a through text integration with Every Action and My Voters in Van?
Yes.
It might require more than one API key, but that's okay. That's a thing that can be done. I am about 95% sure that the answer is yes. I will say, as somebody native to the Southeast region, I live and die by a vote builder. So what I want to do is confirm that. So I'm going to throw a link to our support article on Van, which I think will be very illuminating. My sense is that you just might need one for My Voter and one for Every Action. And when I say one, I mean one API key per side. But yes, I do believe that it's possible, and I'm going to throw a link that will help clarify that as well.
Thank you, Kat.
Mm-hmm.
Another question might be for you and Liz to answer. This person is wondering how you get RSVPs generated from through text into our workflow so that they could get automated text reminders.
Sorry, can you repeat that again?
They were wondering how do you get RSVPs generated from through text into Mobilize's workflow, specifically so that they can get the automated text reminders.
Oh, okay. So you, so people can get the automated text reminders from Mobilize once they sign up for an event. So if you are texting people on through text, if you use your Mobilize link and send those people a link to sign up via Mobilize, then all of those people who sign up with it will be part of the automated confirmation flow. We do not do anything where we like bulk upload shifts into Mobilize. So people need to sign up in order to opt into those confirmation emails and SMS. But once they do that, then they'll automatically get that confirmation flow. I hope that answered the question.
All right, and we Liz, does Mobilize have anything new in the works? Any updates we could get excited about?
Oh, fun. Yeah, we have some fun stuff. We just launched today. You can now add tags to our event campaigns, which is a small but very fun new feature. We'll be launching some new fundraising features in the next quarter or two, which will allow your supporters to also donate in a more kind of seamless fashion. So people are pretty excited about that. And we also have some new kind of capabilities that are rolling out pretty soon related to more kind of like advocacy style events. So that's what I'm excited about. Okay, Brett, I don't know if you have anything to add.
No, I'm really excited about what we're doing with fundraising, and that's coming sooner than later. So be on the lookout for that one. What time at 2:55? Let's see if I could grab another question. There were lots of questions. Thank you all for participating. All right, so some of these seem like follow-up questions. There is one question about a nonprofit that serves homeless women, children, and their families, and they need daily volunteers to commit to mutually agreeable schedules. So they are wondering how they could use Mobilize or just any general, I guess, volunteer strategies or tactics to get these volunteers to work on site during business hours. I know that we have a few articles that speak to similar things. I don't know if anybody on the panel wants to throw in an answer to that too.
One thing, and if I'm understanding like what you're trying to achieve correctly, one thing that might be useful is using the event capping feature on Mobilize. So you can have an event that has multiple shifts. So if you have like a few different blocks of time during the day that you need only 2 to 3 volunteers, you can create that event with those multiple shifts, and then you can set a limit to the number of people who can sign up for it. And then that way you don't have a shift where you only need 3 people showing up, but you have 10 sign up and then none for later in the day. So that might be something that's useful.
Yeah, that's great. I think that's about all that we have for today. It's almost 3, so I don't want to hold anyone over, but we had a ton of questions. I'm sorry if we didn't get to yours. I'm going to put my email address into the chat right now. So if you had any more questions, you could reach out to us on social. You could reach out to us via our website. You could send me an email and I'll make sure you get an answer. But I appreciate you all for attending today. I'm so thankful for our co-hosts, are Liz and Jamie and Kat. Thank you for sharing all this great knowledge. The questions were amazing, and I hope that we all walked away with some new knowledge there that we could put into use soon. Thank y'all for coming.
Thanks.
Thank you both all. You're amazing.
Yeah, thanks everyone.